All right, in this explainer, we are diving into one of the most incredible, most transformative periods in all of human history. We're going to trace the amazing chain of events that dragged Europe out of the medieval age and into the modern world, a shift that literally set the stage for the life you and I are living today. So, you gotta wonder, right? How did we get from a world of knights and castles to a world of steam engines, massive cities, and globe-spanning empires? Well, it wasn't just one thing. It was a cascade, like a series of dominoes, each one knocking over the next, triggering another huge change. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to follow that chain, domino by domino. So where does our story start? Well, it begins with the end of an era. See, for the modern world to be born, the old one kind of had to fall apart. And that meant the two giant pillars that held up European life for centuries, the feudal system and the absolute power of the church, had to start cracking. For hundreds of years, life was basically structured like a giant pyramid. That was feudalism. You had the king at the very top, giving out land to nobles in exchange for their armies. And way down at the bottom, you had the peasants, the serfs, who worked that land. It was a super rigid system that decided your place in the world the moment you were born. Yep, the entire medieval world was built on this one simple deal. Land for loyalty. That's feudalism in a nutshell. But after centuries, this system, which probably seemed like it would last forever, finally started to break down. So as feudalism got weaker, this new feeling of freedom started bubbling up. And at the exact same time, the church, which had been the ultimate authority on everything, started facing its own challenges. This created an opening, a space where new, different ideas could finally take root. And in that fertile new ground, a revolution of the mind was about to kick off. And that brings us to our next massive domino. With the old structures creaking and groaning, Europe went through this incredible rebirth of art, science, and culture. This wasn't a revolution with swords and armies. It was a revolution of the mind. We call it the Renaissance. The word Renaissance literally means rebirth. So what was being reborn? The incredible art, the literature, and the philosophy of ancient Greece and Rome. It was like artists and thinkers were dusting off these amazing ideas that had been mostly tucked away during the Middle Ages. Now, what's really fascinating is how people started thinking differently. It began with humanism, which shifted the focus away from just the divine and onto the potential and dignity of human beings themselves. And once you start focusing on what humans can do, what happens next? You get curious. That sparked a spirit of enquiry, this powerful urge to ask why and how. And that led directly to rationalism, the idea that you shouldn't just take someone's word for it. You should use reason to figure things out for yourself. And you can totally see this change in the art. Even when they were painting religious scenes, Renaissance artists started showing the human body with this new sense of realism and power and beauty. It was a huge leap from the flat, more symbolic art of the medieval period. For the first time in a long time, humanity itself was the star of the show. Now, a spirit of enquiry this powerful couldn't be kept cooped up in books in art studios. Nope. It pushed people to look beyond their own towns, beyond their own horizons, and to explore the physical world itself. This kicked off an age of incredible voyages and discoveries. People started looking at the old maps and thinking, hey, wait a minute, is this really it? Driven by a hunger for new trade routes and, let's be honest, for profit, explorers set sail on these unbelievable journeys. They completely redrew the map of the world, connecting continents and cultures in ways no one had ever imagined.
So you have all these revolutionary ideas popping up in science, art, and exploration. How did they spread so fast? Well, the answer is technology. The invention of the printing press was an absolute game changer. It was basically the internet of its day. For the first time, knowledge could be copied and spread on a massive scale, fanning the flames of the Renaissance all across Europe.
Okay, so let's take stock. The world is more connected, trade is booming, and this new scientific mindset is taking hold. You mix all that together, and you get the perfect conditions for the next great domino to fall, the Industrial Revolution, a time of incredible inventions that would change how literally everything was made. And wow, did it happen fast. It was like one invention just sparked the next one. First, you get the spinning jenny, which let one worker do the job of 8. Then, boom, the water frame comes along and uses water power to do it even better. But the true revolution, the one that changed everything, was James Watt's steam engine in 1769. It gave us a totally new, powerful, and cheap source of energy to run all kinds of machines. This new tech completely flipped society on its head. Before, you had the domestic system, where skilled craftsmen made things in their own homes. But now, you had the factory system, huge numbers of workers all crammed into one building to operate massive, powerful machines. It was a total shift from working by hand to working by machine. The impact was enormous. But let's be real, it wasn't all good. People flooded from the countryside into these brand new industrial cities to find work. And life for this new working class was often just brutal. We're talking ruthless exploitation, working 12 to 15 hours a day in dangerous conditions. Women and kids were hired because you could pay them less. And the slums they lived in were miserable, overcrowded, no sanitation, no light, no heat. This was the dark side of all that progress. This new industrial power created this massive appetite, a hunger for raw materials to feed the constantly running machines, and a hunger for new markets to sell all the stuff they were churning out. And this economic need is what drove the final domino in our chain, a new era of global competition and empire. This cartoon really captures the whole spirit of the age, doesn't it? These highly industrialized European nations started looking outwards, using their new economic and military muscle to conquer and control huge territories all over Asia and Africa. This was the age of colonialism and imperialism. It all came down to a simple economic problem. These factories were churning out goods like crazy, but they couldn't run on air. They needed a constant supply of cheap resources, things like cotton and minerals. And then they needed people to buy all the stuff they made. The solution to both problems? Colonies. And just like that, imperialism became the policy. Powerful industrial nations used their strength to take control over other countries. These colonies were forced to supply cheap raw materials for the factories back home, and then they had to serve as captive markets, buying back the finished goods. It was a global system designed to make the industrial powers incredibly rich. Now, the legacy of this whole era is, well, it's really complex. On one hand, the imperialist nations did bring in new technology, they built things like railways, and they improved medical care in some places. But, and this is a huge but, that progress came at an incredible cost. Local economies were shattered, traditional crafts were destroyed, and entire cultures were suppressed or just wiped out, often because the Europeans felt they were just culturally superior. So there you have it. A 500-year chain reaction, from the fall of feudalism to the Renaissance to the Age of Discovery to the Industrial Revolution, and finally to the Age of Empire. Each step made the next one possible, creating the economic, political, and technological world we all inherited. It leaves us with one last big question to think about. What are the dominoes that are falling today, and what new world are they creating for tomorrow?